I'd like to welcome you here. My name is Jalal Hassan. I'm Professor of Information Systems and Director of Cairo University Innovation Support Center. We're very excited to have you with us today, and we're very pleased to have Richard Lindberg, who will be giving the talk today. But before he starts, I'd like us to very quickly say something about our center. Our center, or our office, we're not yet sure which one it is, but it's a unit that is dedicated to supporting innovation and technology transfer in Cairo University. We currently have two Tempest-funded projects. One is looking after establishing the Universal Chair in Innovation, which happens to be me in this case, and another one is to establish a series of technology transfer offices in 4 Egyptian universities. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ahmed to you, who is directing the Technology Transfer Office, to introduce this event. Dr. Ahmed.
Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to start by introducing myself. I'm Ahmed Shawki Musa. I'm here with the head of the Technology Transfer Office Director of Cairo University. I'm pleased to introduce Richard Lindberg, who is the founder and current head of the company Congress EEA. He's a serial entrepreneur. The idea of hosting him here today is to actually give some inspiring talk to the students and potential entrepreneurs who should be coming out of Cairo University in the next few years. We thought the best thing to do is, instead of hosting one of those old guys like us who made it over the past 25 or 30 years or something. So usually students look at them and say, okay, how can I do this? I don't know how we started. So we thought to host someone who is close to the students' age, or the new graduate's age. We actually made it into the business world immediately after graduation, or maybe he started already before graduation. His first company was very successful to the point that it was sold to a giant business owner in the United States only 5 years after establishment. So it's a great success story. He started it. He did not inherit any money from anybody to start with or anything. So he's just one like us, one like you, who was able to make it. So we thought to host him to talk about his experience in this space, and also to announce something very exciting, something that may be a great opportunity for any student, any graduate, or any faculty member at Cairo University after we finish this talk. So let me welcome Richard Lindberg. Let him talk. We do not want anybody to be excluded, so if anyone has problem with English language for any reason, please let us know. We can make some briefing during the talk about what is going on, so nobody would fall asleep or anything. Okay? Anybody would need me to intervene maybe every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. Anyway, during the talk, if you have any questions, if you need to make sure you understood something, just let us know. As for questions about the talk itself, I will leave it up to Richard to decide whether to answer at the end or make it interactive. It's up to him to manage. Thank you.
All right. Richard is my name, yeah, as you know. I'm here today to talk about my entrepreneurial story. I'm a Swedish citizen. I live in Lund, which is the south of Sweden, and my education is from Lund University, which is, in Swedish terms, a very big university. It has 30,000 students. I understand that Cairo University is much bigger, so like everything else in Egypt, it's much bigger. But that's where I'm from, and I studied business, specifically marketing and strategy. And I've also studied EU knowledge about the European Union, English, and peace and conflict studies. So I have a variety of subjects. But my main subject is business, and that's always my perspective when I start companies. I'm a business guy. I don't understand too much about technology, more than general interest, but my knowledge is about business. I'll talk about a little bit first about my background and what we did with these company names you see here in front of you. But I should also mention the structure of the talk here is, I always want to be concrete when I do these speeches and bring some value to you that are listening. So I'm going to structure it by, in a startup or a company, when you start your own company, you usually go through 3 phases as I see it. The startup phase, when you're just beginning. the operations phase, when you've gotten started and you have money and clients, and the third phase when you exit the company. And so I've had those three sections, and within those three I've detailed one key lesson that I've learned during my time, which I hopefully will be valuable to you when you start your own companies or your own ideas that you have. Okay, so yeah, these companies you see here in front of you. I also should mention why I call this speech Tales from the Trenches. So what that means is that starting a company and running it and eventually selling it is up and down. You go through these phases where it's very good and sometimes it's very bad, difficult. Sometimes you have to be a nasty person to other people. Sometimes you're nice to your employees, but you go through these warlike phases also. That's why I've picked this title for the speech. Okay, so yeah, I studied business in Lund University, and about a year before I finished, I was like any other student thinking that last year, okay, so I perhaps should write a CV and start applying for a job or something. I didn't really know exactly what company I wanted to go to, more than perhaps something with management consulting. That's the only thing I was thinking about. I didn't apply for a job yet, and so I had like a year left, and this was 2004, basically. So I'm a bit older. I'm 33. But at that time, it was 24, 25. I met a friend or a guy who studied technology, because Lund University also has, of course, a faculty of engineering. And he said to me that I have this idea for a software for mobile phones. And I'm a business or engineering guy. He said, I need somebody with business skills to help me establish a company around it if you're interested. I mean, we met during an extra job we had on the side, selling things over the telephone. So I said, sure, let's try. This is the perfect time. I'm still a student. I don't have any commitments aside from my studies. And this is something I often try to tell people. It's the best time to be an entrepreneur when you're studying. I mean, you have the freedom, the energy to try things. And of course, in Sweden, I don't know exactly the Egyptian company. In Sweden, when you study, you have money coming from the government to you every month to be able to live. So I consider that my venture capital. It was small amounts, but enough in the beginning. Anyway, so we, us two together, one engineering guy and one business guy, we started this company, the first one you see there, Convenir. It was later called Mesh Mobile, so that's why it's in brackets. And the software we developed was so that you could access anything on your cell phone through the internet. So no matter if you were sitting in front of a computer or a cell phone or whatever internet connected device you had, you could surf directly inside the telephone's memory card and access pictures, music, and calendars, and everything you had on the phone, basically. It might not sound so innovative now, but remember this is 2004, 2005. At that time, this was really, really new. And so the first thing we decided to do was enter this business plan competition in Sweden. It's called Venture Cup. It's a national competition. So we said, sure, well, let's write something down. It's like, I think, 20 pages or something. And turned out we won. Not the whole competition, but the student section of the competition. And this was the perfect motivation for us. We saw that other people think what we have is interesting. And from there on, it's like a snowball that keeps getting bigger and bigger when it's rolling down a hill. We started with that competition, and we entered another competition. We won even more money. We got recognition. We met people at these different events, mingles, which is a very important lesson also I'll come back to. And then I think we won 11 times in these different business plan competitions. So we got a lot of money for it, which is good because then you don't have to waste your own money, which we don't have, of course. So it's good money and a good experience. as a first-time entrepreneur to be able to take part in these competitions. And I strongly recommend you, if you're thinking about entering these things, to do it. It's a good way to get structured as well, to get your thoughts down on paper. Normally, I don't say that business plan is the best thing to have once you're established, because it's a document that you have to update all the time. It's not very efficient. But as a first-time entrepreneur, I think it's a good idea. Anyway, so it went from there. Basically, we got more recognition, more money, and we even managed to raise, I'll get back to this in detail later, some venture capital from a Swedish-based investor. And we started employing people. And this is the best feeling in the world. When you had this idea basically just shooting around between me and this other guy, and suddenly a year and a half later, we're employing people. I think the ultimate triumph was for my business partner when he employed his former professor in the company. This was really good. Later turned out to be very bad, but in the beginning it was very good. Anyway, so yeah, that's 2005, 2006. I was going around Sweden, Europe, US, presenting our technology and our company to get more money, of course. This was a very capital-intensive company. I mean, as soon as we got money, we started employing people, high and older gentlemen from the IT and telecom sector, because our clients was the mobile phone manufacturers and the mobile carriers on a worldwide level. So we needed people that had experience and networks within these fields. So we started hiring very high-profile people from this side once we got the venture capital in, and that was like 2006. I think we got our first influx of serious cash. Before that, we got in grants from the government and more money from different competitions. But 2006, we got the money, and as I said, I'll get back to this in detail later. The fast story is that we had a lot of success with clients, big-time clients. Obviously, Sony Ericsson, which is now Sony only, is headquarters is in Lund, or their sales and technical headquarters is in Lund. So they were just across the street from us, so they obviously became one of our first clients. Then we worked with Samsung and Qualcomm and different actors like these around the world. We decided to sell the company in late 2008 or beginning of 2009 for a reason I'll come to later. And after that, me and the same founder, we started another company, that's Admedius, the second one there. Also software, mobile phones. This time we're doing connecting big screen televisions, which like 40, 50 inch and bigger, with internet services. So you can, for example, watch movies that are on the internet directly on your big screen TV without any wires or box or anything. It's just software that lies in the phone. We're in the phase now of raising more venture capital for that company. But for myself, after I sold the first company, I said to myself, is IT and telecom something I want to do the rest of my life? And given that I'm a business guy, I didn't have detailed knowledge about. So I said, it's not enough for me. It's not giving me the ultimate pleasure in my life of doing this. So me and a couple of other entrepreneurs, we started something called Congress for Environmental Advancement, and this is the main reason why I'm in Egypt today, which is about sustainability. We connect the business sector and the academic sector around sustainability projects. And when I say sustainability, it can be social, economic, environmental issues, depending on where we work, of course. The same issues we work in Sweden the issues we work in Sweden is not the same as we would be doing in Egypt, for example, or London, where we also work. I'll get back to that a little bit later also. I just wanted to give you a brief rundown of what I've done and what I'm doing at the moment. So before I get into the three different phases that I talked about, I would like to say something about entrepreneurship in general and why I think that is the greatest job in the world. it's actually more than a job, it's more of a lifestyle, according to me. And so what does it represent? For me, it's about getting absolute control of your own life. Nobody telling you when to get up, when you have to get to work, when you can have vacation, and things like that, and what you have to do every day. For me, this is allergic. I don't want to hear anybody telling me what to do. So I have a problem with authority. In that case, it was best to do my own companies. So this is what I like to say when it comes to why choose entrepreneurship. You can control your own destiny, you can control your own life. And like I said before, it's actually very good to do it early on, because what normally happens, and I've seen this happen to a lot of my friends that I studied together with, that also wanted to do their own companies. But first, they started working for big companies, telecom companies, H&M, IKEA, and these big Swedish companies. And what happens? They get in there, they get a salary every month, quite high salary. They get to travel a lot sometimes. But this also makes you comfortable. You know that every month I'll be getting the same money. You start you buy an apartment perhaps, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And you find yourself in a life which is hard to get out of, because the next step, of course, about entrepreneurship, it's not always easy and fun. There are hardships as well. Hard work, you have to work a lot of hours, morning to night sometimes. You're actually never free. I mean, it's, like I said, a lifestyle. So I work during the weekends, or Friday, Saturday for you. Sometimes I don't work on a Monday or Tuesday because I feel like I want to do something else. I mean, so it's there all the time. In the beginning, like I said, you have to work perhaps 1-2 years without getting any money. So you have to make sure that you're capable of getting money some other way during that time. And in Sweden, being an entrepreneur is also very risky, because normally in Sweden, if you don't have a job, you're unemployed, you get support from the government to be able to pay your apartment and to buy things so you can live. But if you decide to say, I want to start a company, and then you go through these first maybe 1 or 2 years before the company has grown and you can start making money, you don't get that money from the government. So it's a harder path to take. And there's always the risk that you fail, and depending on the country, that can be either good or bad. In Sweden, it's bad to fail. We have a mentality in Sweden that if you fail, you're considered, people, why did you do this? And they don't want to give you a second chance. It's beginning to change, thankfully. But like I worked a lot in the US because we had an office there with the first company. And they have a totally different mentality. There, sometimes when I met some of the biggest venture capitalists in the world that you might have read about, they often give you an extra chance, and it's a better chance for them to give you money if you failed once at least, because they know that the mistakes you've done the first time, you will not do them again. So in some countries, failure is actually seen as a positive sign in some sense. I mean, it depends on the failure. If you committed criminal mistakes, obviously it's not good. But normal failure is considered okay. This is something I hope Sweden will work its way through. So basically you have to ask yourself, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm made of the right stuff. Can I take all the difficult moments as well? So analyzing yourself is the best way to do it. What kind of person are you? Do you want to give orders or take orders? I mean, I'm making it very black and white here, but at some point you have to do that. Are you comfortable leading people, telling them what to do, taking responsibility for them? Or do you prefer somebody else saying, or are you more the comfortable person that needs structure? Because entrepreneurship is not structure, it's chaotic from every point of view. So this is a very important question to ask yourself, and nobody else can tell you. You have to really know yourself. for me, for example, like I said, I have a problem with authority. I mean, if I found myself now working for a big company and suddenly I see some idiot that's higher than me trying to tell me what to do, and I know I'm smarter than this guy or woman, that would be a very terrible mistake. So this is what I mean, you have to analyze yourself. And speaking about entrepreneurship, it's not so easy to say there is one model. The guy selling kefta in the street or vegetables or whatever, he's also an entrepreneur. Then there are entrepreneurs that start big companies that go international and have 10,000 employees. Obviously, there's a big difference here. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I mean, it depends on your personality, what you want to do. When I speak about entrepreneurship, I speak of the latter, the big company entrepreneurs. Basically, you start ideas that can scale. This is a very important thing that I always come back to. When you design your company or your idea from the beginning, and you write your business plan or whatever document you use, that you try to find out how well can this idea grow? Can I make it bigger? I mean, or will it always be local? And as in Sweden, entrepreneurship is becoming more of a, I mean, it's number 2 now, I think, on the list of what is the favorite job for Swedish young people. They put entrepreneur. This needs to happen everywhere, because if you look at what are the main challenges, I mean, also in Sweden, our biggest problem in Sweden is youth unemployment. I know you have some of that problem here as well. We have 24% youth unemployment in the town where I live, which is the 3rd largest in Sweden, or the town next to where I live. And everybody knows that the best way to combat this, to create jobs, it will not be the big companies. They're very efficient, they are slimming down, they have other resources. It's not the government either. If you look at the governmental sector in most countries around the world, they're also slimming down. You can see certain European countries which are forced to lay off maybe over 100,000 people in the government sector. So where will all these jobs come from that young people will work in? Small, medium-sized companies that will scale. I'm not saying everybody in Egypt or Sweden, for that matter, should be entrepreneurs, but some of them should be. They're the ones that should create these companies that grow and employ on a massive scale. That is where the job opportunities will be. So it's a very important task for the government, for each part of society to support entrepreneurship in that sense. That's why I call entrepreneurs future Egyptian heroes as well. To end this part of the conversation or the lecture, this is not mine. I've stolen it from a friend of mine on Facebook, so I cannot claim trademark. But I think this is a very good summary of what you should think about to be happy in your choice of career, no matter if it's entrepreneurship or something else. So obviously, yeah, the red part in the middle is the sweet spot. And this is, which I mentioned here, analyze yourself. If you do that correctly, you will understand these circles and have an easier time getting into the red parts. So what happens usually is, of course, that you often do the 2 circles in the bottom. You find something that you're good at, you match that with a job opportunity where you get money, but this might not be what you actually love to do. And this is why it says rich but bored. And sometimes people go with their emotions. They pick something that they absolutely love, they're good at it, but it doesn't pay them any money. It's not a good recipe either. And then the other section, you find something that pays you well, you love it, but you're not really good at it. I mean, it doesn't give you results either. And this is also a problem in society that I don't think too many people understand or themselves enough to get into the red zone. Any questions before I move on?
Yeah. The first question is, why did you sold your company in the late 2008?
Yeah, it was late 2008, beginning 2009, yes.
Yeah. Why?
Why? I'll come to that, but okay, I can tell you now. The reason why we sold it was, one, we were bored. Basically, we'd done it for a couple of years, and we didn't feel, well, we had very big dreams for this company. As you often do when you start at your own, your first company, you're very naive, and you think this will be the next Facebook or Google or something. I'm not that naive now. So we were bored, but the main reason also was that some of the recruitments we made, specifically the older people we hired, were very bad. They had a very good network, they had a reasonably good reputation, but they were not smart enough. And me and my business partner, we always said that we only want to work with the best people. This is one of the points I'll come to later. We quickly realized after we hired them, the mistake we did was we didn't do the background checks enough. I mean, they were available, and suddenly they liked our company. We got like, oh, impressed. Somebody in their position likes our company, let's hire them. So we didn't do it good enough, the analysis. And so we hired them, and we quickly realized that they were mostly talking and not doing very much good action. And when we were with them at meetings all over, we flew around the world. We had like offices in Korea, in Japan, the US, and Silicon Valley, and of course Sweden. So we were doing business all over the world, flying with them, and it became obvious to me, specifically just after a few months, that my God, these people are stupid. I mean, I cannot say it another way. They were saying things like they didn't understand what we were doing in technology. And I knew that the other people, our clients on the other side, were reacting to it. And I mean, it took us maybe a year and a half, and this was beginning of 2008, when we were searching for more money. This time we were searching for a round, which is basically $5 million plus. And at that stage, we were again with them, and I started getting calls from several high-profile venture capitalists, both in the US and Sweden, saying that we will not invest in this company if you don't fire or get rid of these people. And we've understood that from the beginning, reasonably early as well. So we were plotting, either we have to get them out or we get out, because it's not going to work like this. We also had a very different strategy. We wanted to, me and my business partner, we wanted to do a strategy where we went directly to the end consumer, you guys with your cell phones. They wanted to work through the big telecom companies. But what was happening at the time was, with the internet entering the mobile phone, everything was changing. The business models, everything was changing, and they didn't realize this. So we had two different strategies. In the end, we chose to let them buy us out because we saw there were so many problems in the company that would take a long time to fix them. So we said, okay, we're still young, let's take the money and enjoy it. We have several other ideas we can do. It's better to get out with your reputation intact, because I don't want to have my reputation put next to somebody that's not doing a very good job in very important circles in Silicon Valley, for example. That would be very, very bad. So we made the very tough decision, I have to say. I'll get into it also later, to sell. And this is not easy, because it was still early on in the companies that the founders, both the founders are leaving. It's not very good. So, I mean, they didn't want us to sell, the other guys in the company, because they realized that would it would be much harder for them to get this A round of money that they needed to support and continue with the company. So our agreement was that we would help them get the money, and then we would get out afterwards. Obviously, this also made it difficult, because we had to tell the investors that this is going to happen. We cannot lie. I mean, but we eventually found one private equity player in the US from Silicon Valley, and one very big Swedish investor firm, venture capital firm, that agreed to these terms. So we got in $6 million, and then we got out. We sold everything. We even made sure that we hadn't any non-competition clauses, which is basically saying that we couldn't start anything else in the same realm, but we said, no, we don't want this. We have to have total freedom. It was a tough negotiation, but we managed to do it. So that's a very long answer to your question.
Actually, I'm sorry, let me comment on this because this is related to the announcement that we will make at the end. Selling a company does not necessarily mean that something wrong went with the company.
No.
In entrepreneurship, we always say that a question to ask to the new entrepreneur is, what is your exit strategy? So making a company is not like the culture we are used to in Egypt through the TV and movies that somebody is making a company to stay forever with. Actually, this is rarely happening. If you mention the examples that you probably would know, like Apple, Microsoft, these are the rare examples. Most companies in the world are made, when you develop a company, it's like when you develop a piece of furniture. You develop it, you spend some time, you spend some money on it, and then at a certain point, you want to decide what you want to do with it. Is it a nice chair that you want to keep forever? Is it something that turned out to be money making that you want to solve and then make another one? So this is why we have the term that we call serial entrepreneur. People who create companies to reach to a certain point and then they sell them and then they create something else. Okay. Steve Jobs was one of those. When we fired him from Apple, he created Next Step and then he created another one and then another one. Exactly. And then Apple was about to sink, so they got him back. So creating a company and selling it does not necessarily mean that something wrong went with it. Okay. Very recently in Egypt, actually there are many examples, but one of the great examples is Dr. Khaled Ismail, who used to be a professor here at Cairo University, who created a company you can check the website for. It's called CSD Soft. It turned out in very few years, like Richard's example, I think in about maybe between 6 to 8 years. It turned out from a startup company to one of the top companies in the world creating new technologies in the wireless communication systems. And last year it was sold to Intel. Sometimes it is also sold because a company went too good. Yeah. Because when you become too good, you start getting the giants in this industry trying to acquire what you are having rather than recreating it. So you have a good thing, so they start coming up to you to say, why do you want to sell this? And sometimes they actually put pressure. Sometimes if you do not sell, they might start doing some nasty things like creating teams to try to compete with you and try to reduce your revenue so that you agree to sell. So it's, you can write a book or you can have a whole lecture about your question. It's a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say that the best thing to, I mean, you can have your dreams in the beginning. That's perfectly fine, and I support that. The main lesson is be flexible during the trip or the journey when you start your company. If things show up in a big company like Facebook or Google or whatever, which is happening now. I mean, in the US, in Silicon Valley especially, people are starting companies of the specific purpose of selling it to Facebook or Google because they have so much money. Now Facebook is going in IPO on the stock market and they have an extra $5 billion to spend. That will create, I think I read, 50 to 100 new millionaires in dollars in the Silicon Valley area that are willing then to invest in new companies. So you have to be flexible, and if things don't turn out that your company will be in the next Google, take the chance to sell it. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you surely will have new ideas as well to pursue. And the second time around, I can assure you, from my own personal experience, is much easier because you have the connections, you know the mistakes you've done, and it'll be much easier. So it's nothing wrong to do that. Okay, so as I promised, I made the section down to 3 here. Starting up, the startup phase. What is the key lesson in this phase? I would say, I mean, you can check by talking to any venture capitalist, and they'll tell you that the team or the people behind the idea is the most important thing. With the right people, you can almost sell anything. So the team here, founding team, if you have an idea and you want to start a company yourself, I would recommend you to find somebody else with complementary skills. So in this case with us, my friend was an engineer and I was a business guy. This is a very good combination. Don't have too many founders. I mean, there's an expression with too many chefs is a problem. I mean, it's good with 2 to 3 because then you have faster way of deciding what to do instead of getting stuck in endless conversations because you cannot agree. So a good size is 2 to 3. And also what I would like to say is you have to be very in agreement in this founding team of what to do for the next couple of years. Because what will happen is as soon as you start getting bigger, as soon as you get money from external investors and employees and everything like that, your unity will be tested once and again and again and again. And if you have a weak unity, that will create big problems in the company. You could even be voted out or whatever could happen. So keeping a strong unity, which means that you have to be in agreement of the big strategic goals, also the small details, everything has to be covered and you have to understand what you want to do together. And I can give you a perfect example. I will always give real life examples when I say something, so it's not something I read in a book. For us, this was the best test, and this is why I could start another company directly afterwards with the same guy, because we had a very good relationship. We had similar backgrounds, which helped also. What happened was that when we started growing and we got our first money from a Swedish venture capitalist, we employed these older gentlemen, which I described before. And as I said, we weren't happy with them quite early on, both in terms of their intelligence and what they could actually do. What one of them was especially good at, though, was trying to create problems between me and the other founder. Because one of these other older gentlemen, he was also business-oriented like me. So he was feeling competition with me, and he understood that he needed the other founder much more because he was the technical brain behind the company, so he couldn't get rid of him. But if he could try to get rid of me, he would get more piece of the company himself. So there was always this contention there, and he was very immoral in many senses. I'm not going to name names here, but and I started realizing this early on, and I told my business partner that this is going to happen. They're going to try to test us with various tactics to see if they can break our unity. They'll have it much easier to control the company, because if we don't vote the same way, they will have the majority in all the votes and the strategic choices. At first he didn't believe me because he said, no, it's not going to happen. But then I said, okay, look now, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. So I mapped out a couple of things that would happen, and they happened. So after that, he trusted me and said, okay, from now on, I'll let you handle the intrigue. And don't kid yourselves, even if it's a very small company with only maybe 5 employees, there will still be politics inside the company, just as if it's a big one, or if it's the state agency or whatever. This is, it just will happen. And throughout the entire company's time we were there, we had these battles. They tried to get in other people that were friends of theirs, so that would be in a majority in terms of numbers. We said no. So basically, by 2008, we had that problem, which I told you about before, that it was either them or us, because we couldn't work together. I mean, I don't blame anybody else than ourselves. I mean, we hire them. It's our mistake from the beginning. And this is the main lesson I've drawn from the first company, is the recruiting, how important that is. I'll come back to that also. But absolutely, the biggest mistake we did was hiring these 2 people. Otherwise, we could have sold the company for maybe 10 times as much money. People ask me if I think my first company was a success. My experience with the first, I said, it's a semi-success. Because we could have easily sold that company for 10 times as much money if we did more things right and we had the right people from the beginning. Yeah, so in the startup phase, the main lesson I would like to say is have a very strong founding team with complementary skills. Other important lessons during this phase is also, like I already mentioned this one with the scalable idea, think global. And everybody's saying that, okay, think global. What does that mean then? Swedish people in general, we tend to think like this. Okay, let's first make a success in Sweden, and then we have tested it. Okay, now we're comfortable, and then maybe we'll go to Norway now, or Finland, or Denmark. And this is wrong. In today's world, you have to think it has to be as natural for me to say that, depending on, of course, the idea you have and the company you have, that if it's an idea that would work in Egypt, it has to be as normal for me, instead of going to Norway, to go to Egypt. You have to have this mentality in your head that the world is your market, and it's not something you have to try first only in one place. You have to, if your intent is to create a global company, this is the way you have to think, and there's no other way. It will not work. And to make sure that you don't have an idea that's going to fail, or I mean, it can fail later on, but to increase the chances, I think this is a mistake many people do, is they sit in their office for too long time and think just inside the office without checking outside, without talking to people on the outside, companies, partners, whatever. They're sitting and analyzing the business plan or whatever, the idea, for too long without talking to external people. So my suggestion is to, as early as you can, get verification that your idea is attractive on the market. This can be easy. I mean, you establish a relationship with somebody you trust from the business sector. Consider them mentors or advisors or whatever you want to call them. That's a good recommendation, to have an advisory board. It's not an actual board, it's an advisory board of people that are relevant to the idea you're pursuing, that can help you in the beginning making some choices, but also telling you, no, don't go in this market, go in this market instead. You shouldn't have those features on the software, they're not good. Whatever, you know, these things that make you, when you come out to your first client meeting, you're trying to sell your product or service, that you have a much bigger chance of matching what you have with what the market wants. So early verification. And in this beginning phase also, take advantage of all the free stuff that's out there. We have a lot of government grants, EU money, which I'm sure Egypt can take part of as well. I know there's very many programs in between. Incubators are good. Also, because they connect you with this point here. When you sit with other entrepreneurs, you get inspired, you get knowledge from people that have other skills than you have. It's an atmosphere that you can use for many different purposes. It's much better than to sit by yourself in some office and feeling fenced off from the other world. And something that I've used to my success, both in this company and now, is to take part in as many as I can, of quality, of course, network sessions, mingles, conferences, and stuff like that. This is where if you're social and you don't have a problem approaching somebody with your business card in 30 seconds, talking what you do and get the business card back. This is the best way of meeting people and having a face connection with them. So when you get back to them the other day or afterwards, they know who you are. Instead of just trying to find the switchboard and calling people cold, it's not a good idea. Meet them at these kind of events. Yes, question?
In your startup phase, how long did it take from you, in the proposal phase? You said you won a lot of competitions when you were a student, and then afterwards, were you offering them a sample, or were you offering a tool itself, or were you just offering the idea and getting money for it?
I can tell you, when we were in the business plan competition phase, the government grant phase, and even when we got our first venture capital money in the seed phase, we had nothing to show. Nothing. We had a business plan and text, and a small, perhaps a video showing what the technology should do. We had nothing else. So it's also about how convinced you are in your presentations.
How long did it take?
It took almost 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, that's why I said 2 years without money. Except for the business, that kind of money, but that was paid for company expenses.
And the people who offer you money or give you money, do they ask for something a share?
Yeah, not when you win business plan money, competition money, and you get government grants, they don't take any shares in your company, at least not in Sweden. I mean, it might be different in other places, but it's first when you take venture capital money, that's when they take shares of your company. So when we got 3 million Swedish, which is roughly the same as Egyptian pound, so 3 million Egyptian pounds, basically, we gave 10% of the shares of our company for that 3 million. So it obviously that meant we had a valuation of the company of 30 million. And what we had at that point, this was late 2006, was the business plan. And at that time, I think my partner had also developed a small demonstration of the technology. So you didn't have to have more if you have something that the investors see. First, they have to like you as a team. And two, they have to believe in that this idea will, of course, become much bigger. It's not necessary. I mean, perhaps now with the economic crisis, they've raised the bar. So they want to see a little bit more. Maybe they want to see that you have some client connections and stuff like that. But at that time, we didn't need any more.
All right. 2 quick questions. Like I see, there's a lot of math calculation about the financial department.
I was the one. I mean, I studied strategy, so numbers specifically, financial numbers, Excel sheets and things like that, which you use for calculating the value of the company. I had to learn. I mean, and then I just called some people, do you have a good model, Excel sheet, send it to me. And then I started learning it myself because also, I mean, at that point, you don't want to trust anybody with this. It's a super important thing. So I wanted to learn it myself. And I still do. You know, I have my huge Excel sheets where you put in and then you get out this fantastic value. I still use those. So I learned it myself, basically.
Right. To get the holistic idea, you start gathering money.
Yeah.
Up to this point, you didn't have a working example. Like you just had the idea, and a lot of people are interested in it.
Yeah, we had a small demo at the.
Small demo.
Yeah, but
when you started to hire people, like, did you have enough amount of money for those people, like for a year, or how did you calculate this?
There's two ways to do it. The way we did it was that we took a chance. So the money we first got in, the 3 million, I mean, in Sweden the salaries are insane, I can tell you, and higher than here. But so we didn't have enough money. We hired first 2 people, and we didn't have enough money to cover them for a year, no way. And we didn't even take money ourselves at this point. But what we did was we gave them, because they were still studying also. I mean, they had their 6 months left of their study. And in Sweden, as an engineer, when you have 6 months left, you're required to go out in the business world and find a project to do with this business. So what we said was that you can work on projects for our business. You know, so we got massive amounts of coding done for our software from these 2 people that were still getting money from the university. You know, like I said, government money. But then when we got more money, because then we had tested these people also, the engineers. So that was good. But when we got more money, we did the mistake of hiring these older gentlemen. And for some of them, we had to give them shares also because, I mean, they wanted, I mean, a CEO in Sweden with experience from the stock market for a relatively small company, we had to pay them 100,000 Egyptian pounds per month. I mean, to be a CEO, so you understand that the money will disappear quite quickly. So with that money, we also made sure that we went out to the market and got project with Sony Ericsson, so we got more money in. But that's why also in beginning of 2008, we had to search for this bigger round, which I mentioned with the $6 million, because the money was running out. Even with client projects, it was running out. And this is, I mean, normal. This is how many companies grow. I know one person, for example, he's been part of very many startups, not as a founder and all, but very early on. He's helped to raise 1 billion Egyptian pounds roughly in venture capital money for different companies in different stages. I mean, it's sometimes you take in too much money also, that's another problem. Yeah, okay. I would like to come now to the phase we were in after we got the first seed money. So we're now in with 3 million plus money. And so this is what I call the operations phase. We had beginning to get clients, we had employees, we had money. And soon, like I said, we started seeing that the money was running out, so we had to prepare for another round. And so to conclude and summarize the issue of money, there's an important lesson to be learned that money can be divided into two things. It's normal or stupid money, if you wouldn't call it like that, and smart money. And the difference is that in the first 3 million we took in, that was absolutely stupid money, in terms that the investors didn't have knowledge about our sector. They were not specialized. They had money, and the investment managers were like generalists. They didn't have a specific knowledge about telecom or IT or anything like that. So they couldn't give us any contacts within the sector, and they couldn't really help us with our strategic thinking or anything. They just gave us money, and then they wanted a lot of power in return. They wanted to decide things. And what we felt was that they're not equipped to decide anything because they don't know anything. They don't know what we're talking about. And that's what I'm saying about smart money. Instead would have been for us to take money from a venture capital firm or some other place that had detailed knowledge about our sector, that perhaps had worked in it before, started a company within it, anything, that made them an asset to us, not only for the money, but for their knowledge. So knowledge and money about what you do is smart money, and this is what we should have done. It's easy to say now, of course, but when you're there and you need the money and all things are happening fast, you don't think as clearly as you do afterwards, of course. But now when I'm here, I can say it, and I wish some people would have said it much harder to me when I was at that stage. Because what happens if you take in stupid money and you got people trying to decide things in your company is that, as you asked me before, they want shares in return for the money, okay? But that's not all. If that was all, that was fine. But what happens is, of course, you get a shareholders agreement, a contract saying that, okay, we will give you this money, we want this amount of shares, but we will also want to have control over the big decisions that happen in the company. For example, hiring a CEO, firing a CEO, going into new markets internationally, attracting new board members, all the major decisions, they had power to say no. Okay, so if we suggested something they didn't like, they could say no and it wouldn't happen. They didn't have enough power to do things completely by themselves. So what was happening is, once we started fighting amongst ourselves, was that we were blocking everything. Nothing was going forward. So this is one of the main reasons why we sold, because we didn't see that happening there. So this is also important to realize that when you get your first money, it's not only about looking at how many shares you have to get out, it's reading this very fine print in the contract saying how much power these people, because they only got 10% of our company at that stage when we got 3 million, but they have power to block us that own the rest, the 90. At some point you think that is insane, but this is standard practice. But of course you can negotiate some parts so it's not so bad as we had it. So read and check your shareholders agreement very, very much. And we did we read it, but we didn't actually know, what would happen because we've never done it before. And some people say, "Oh, don't worry, this is the worst case scenario. That will never happen." And of course, it happened. So you have to prepare for the worst as well. This one I've been on already, recruiting management. Take your time, ask questions, do a 360-degree analysis. Ask their former employees, ask their former bosses, ask people that have been partners with everything, what they think about this person. Try to get as many people's account. If we had done that, because what we found out later was that people came up to us and said, "Well, no wonder you're having problems. This guy, he's famous for being an idiot," or they said much worse. But And oh, he's famous for only talking and eating cake in the office, even if there's nothing to celebrate. And so we found out all these things afterwards, and that was our mistake. Yeah, and of course, we didn't have this. We had, between me and the other guy that I founded the company with, but with the rest of them, we didn't have a strategy for the whole company. And that made it so much difficult in attracting money in the later stages. What also happened is, and this is when you asked me about finances and things, that I said it's important to have control. One of my skills that I can make a lot of stuff happen with very little money. And once we recruited these big time CEOs and things, the money was flowing out of the company like there was no stopping it. We had travel expenses for 1 month, maybe for 200,000 Egyptian pounds, and their salaries. I mean, they were spending money because in their mind, they were still at the big company. One of the guys was just coming from a listed company on the Swedish Stock Exchange. So they were still spending money like it's a big company. And I told them, I sent out emails and I tried to tell the board, which I was on as well, we cannot spend money like this if we're going to go down quickly. And they stopped for some time, but then you get back to spending again. And then we're in 2008, we need more money. So make sure that you can have full control of the money flow. Or if you don't have control, at least understand what's happening, because then you can change it at least when you see things are going bad. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't like numbers because it's boring with numbers. You want to create products, you want to establish new offices in different markets. You don't care too much about the little numbers, and all of a sudden you find yourself surprised when the accountant says that, well, you have money for 2 months more, then the company has to go bust.
So you were the business part, and your friend was the technical part. What were they doing?
The other ones?
Yeah.
No, it was product development, CEO. Yeah, it was mostly business, and this was also another thing we should have done better, was to recruit more technical people instead of business people. We had maybe 70% business and 30% technology. We should have been the other way around. So we were like a lot of business people trying to do the same thing, which was not good either.
So I didn't hear anything. You didn't have like an HR department. You didn't need a marketing manager. You didn't need a sales representative.
Well, we divided these tasks, of course, among ourselves. But there was no clear line. I mean, in HR departments, you don't need, when you're like, at that time we were 7 people. You cannot pay for an HR people at that stage. So we had to do all those functions yourself. And I mean, that's what happens when you're a startup. You have to do all the jobs yourself. It's seldom that you have money to pay consultants for everything. So we tried to do things. I mean, in terms of marketing and things like that, you also have to understand that there's no need to market things when you don't have your product ready. I mean, there was no need for that. What we needed is marketing towards, establishing contacts with important people at these big businesses. That was the marketing we needed. Yes. So coming then to the last stage of the company, my number one lesson there is a statement called "Kill Your Darlings," which is basically saying that even if this is your baby and you care a lot about it, you've spent a lot of years working on it, it feels very special to you, you should not hesitate to kill it or to finish it. And if it's not working well, don't spend time trying to save things or changing things that cannot be changed. You're wasting your time. So also, again, with this self-analysis, make sure you understand if it's, if there's a chance to do it or not. And be rational about it. You asked me if it was easy or why we sold the company. I said it's not an easy decision. And if you get too emotional, you're probably going to make the wrong decision. We could have fought like crazy to protect and save the company, and try to kick them out instead. But I think I know we made the right decision, because I'm going to tell you what happened afterwards. But it took some time for us to come up with that. We have to let this go, because there are so many things that are not right that will take us too long to fix. So we didn't get emotional, and I think I don't get emotional too often, so I think that was good in this sense. Make your financial analysis. How much would we make by selling it instead of staying on? Of course you cannot exactly, but think about your reputation for the long term, not only for that very business you're doing at the moment. It's important to walk away from something and feeling, of course, you have to feel comfortable with yourself, but also keeping an integrity that you're going to do business again with people, investors that you met, perhaps in the same sector, working with the same people, same clients. You have to walk away with a reputation and integrity that is spotless, because the worst thing you can do is end up doing very, very bad things that will look bad on your reputation, and then you will kill your chances of doing business again. And this is what happened to these other guys that we had problems with, that their reputation was not good in the end. I'll get back to that now. So if you decide then to exit, and exit can come in very many different forms. You could sell it to another company. You could, of course, put it into liquidation if it goes really well. That's also an exit, which might teach you lessons. But of course, it's better to sell it and get some money. Or you could put it, an exit could also be to sell it or put it on the stock market. There are different forms of an exit. We chose to sell, and I recommend this in this particular situation, also because think about your own personal development. If you come to the realization this is not your Facebook or Google, you're not going to spend your whole life doing this. What do I want to do next? I considered that I want to try my skills, my knowledge in a different sector. I don't only want to work with IT and telecom again, so that's why I started Congress for Environmental Advancement, working with sustainability. I thought that was also during these years I got to know myself, what I'm capable of. I will not back down. I could make important decisions. So it was a lesson in myself also during these years that made me realize that I was born to do this. I was born to start companies, work for myself. This is something you have to realize also for yourself. And there was no going back. So to sell the company, start something new, get going again. Don't be emotional, just do it. And okay, so what happened here? What's the end result? We sold the company, and we said good luck to the other people. That's it, good luck, nothing more. I could still talk to them afterwards when I met them in the street. There was no shouting or anything like that. We helped them get the $6 million, of course. Then we got out. So they had a lot of money then to continue working with their strategy that they suggested. We predicted, of course, that this would never work because we think they were doing the wrong strategy. And what happened was, to give you a quick summary, was that for 2 years they tried doing their strategy. The money ran out after 1 year, so they had to take in extra money after 1 year because they employed, when we sold, we had 20 employees. 1 year after we sold, they had 30 employees, including 10 in India, in Bangalore, things. They were spending money like crazy, and their strategy was failing as we had predicted. They didn't sell anything, not one single thing. Instead, they had made debts for the company. And 2 years after we sold, what happens was that they gave up and they sold. The company was sold again, mostly for the technology and the employees, to a big US telecommunications giant called M-Blocks. And our company, Conveneer, or Marshmallow as it was called, became a subsidiary of that. Then you might say, okay, that was fantastic. They must have made a lot of money on this. No. What happened was that since they were in so much trouble, they had no money left, they had no clients, but they had still an interesting technology. And the value was, of course, the people working in it. They were smart people, the engineers. So this big company wanted to presence in Sweden. They found the technology interesting. They could use it in their platforms. So they bought it, but they bought it for such a cheap price that the investors that put in the $6 million when we were still there made a loss, and so did other people. And I know that the CEO and the chairman that we had particular problems with were fired quickly after, not only from our company, but they've been fired from every other board. They were sitting in that region of where we live. And the funniest moment was 5 months or 6 months after we sold the company, I got a phone call from a government agency working with entrepreneurship in Sweden, asking me for a reference from one of these older gentlemen that was seeking a new job at this place because he was fired afterwards. And I, of course, told him the truth, what I thought about him. So I don't think he got the job. I know he didn't get the job. This was a kind of a small victory in some sense, but they were kicked out of every other board, and I was happy with that. But so we made, and if you analyze the situation, we made the right decision because we at least got, I mean, it was not a fortune, but I can live comfortably. We made the right decision in that sense.
Have you ever been asked to go back to the old company?
No, I have not. And if they would have asked me, I would have said no in 1 second. I mean, also, I mean, once you make a tough decision, don't look back. Don't second guess yourself. It's no good in these types of situations. Make the decision and move on. I mean, this was not Apple. So, I mean, if I was in the Steve Jobs case here, when people ask you to come back to a multi-billion-dollar company, I might have thought longer than 1 second, but this was not the case here. So, no, I was very happy to do that. And what's happened afterwards, just to conclude the entire speech here by a few minutes, is that so we started this new IT company. We played around with different ideas for the first year and a half, and then we said, no, this is not good. Then we came up with another idea, and yes, this is the idea, we said. And so we took a lot of time there. We didn't jump into the first thing that came into our mind. We analyzed it quite long period. The difference now was, of course, that we knew all the venture capital players, both in Sweden, Denmark, some in the UK, and definitely most of them in the US, in Silicon Valley, which, I mean, our network is real good in that. And yeah, so now we have an interesting, my partner's out now trying to raise more money to it. I'm helping, but I'm spending most of my time now not in the IT company. I'm an owner and board member, but I'm trying to focus now on building Congress, the sustainability company I started, into a global company. And this is part of the reason why I'm here in Egypt, to get some projects off the ground here as well. And I'm extremely happy with that. Sustainability is an interesting sector to work in, and there is lots of future potential. And the difference here is now people call me a social entrepreneur instead of, you know, a normal entrepreneur. I don't particularly like the term social entrepreneur in a sense, because for me it's still about business at the end of the day. I mean, you have to, even if you're a social entrepreneur, you have to make sure your company makes money, otherwise you're not sustainable yourself. And what value can you do to society if you don't live on? So what I'm promoting now with Congress, and we work with big businesses and try to connect them with the academic sector and other government agencies, is that saying, be socially, create social value. Yes, absolutely, do that. That's what we're working for. But at the same time, don't forget about your core goals in the company. Tie creating social value to creating business value for yourself. Whether it's environmental problems you're working with, or energy efficiency, water conservation, I mean, whatever issues important in that local context. I do different speeches on this subject about creating shared value, how different sectors in society can work together to create value for all. But that's a different point. But anyway, so now we're in the position of, we worked in Sweden with this for 2 years. We worked with big companies, the WWF, British Council, universities. And during 2011, we said, okay, we have to do this in different markets. I spent a lot of time in Egypt. So I said, fine, let's try to do something here as well. And that's what we were going to do. We also work in London and hopefully soon in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and different places in the Middle East also.
Yeah, I have a very crucial question actually. How did you manage the differences in culture since you are working in different countries?
Well, I mean, we're still in the beginning phases, so I'm not going to say we're experts in different culture management here. We're learning, absolutely learning, but the goal is, of course, I mean, we come in with our people and work here and just to get something started. But our long-term goal is, of course, to employ people from the country we're working in. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. I mean, even if I spend maybe 2 years here in Egypt for straight, I would not know the country, obviously, like a local person. So our goal is to first get some projects going so we can have financial stability as well, and then we can employ local people that have expertise in the subjects we're working with. So I guess that's the way we will handle it specifically. But the goal of the company, Congress EA, is to create a company that has a lot of different cultures, man, woman, different countries, whatever, working together in one really strong management team as well. And then having, of course, local offices. But one of our main goals is to promote working across borders. And no matter if the border is national, educational, cultural, whatever, that's one of our main missions, is to bridge these gaps. So even when we work with, like I said, connecting different sectors in society, it's the same thinking there. There are different cultures when you work in a business, different culture when you work at a university. And sometimes when you want to do a common project, these things clash. We're a company dedicated to making sure that these clashes are not so big, that we come up with a project and invite these different sectors and work efficiently together in sustainability. But to answer you again, the best way to handle it is, of course, to have local people working with us. Because what we learn here, we can bring to other countries where we're doing, and vice versa. Stuff we learn in other markets might be interesting in Egypt as well. So hopefully when we get big enough, we can create this cross-national benchmarking and knowledge exchange as well. I'm done with my speech. If you have any questions, shoot.
Any more questions for Richard?
Can I ask, I'm actually very intrigued about your new sustainability drive.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what sort of value you're hoping to create?
I can mention, of course, projects we've done. I think this is the best way to explain. So we've done one project that I could mention here is together with the WWF and the British Council. We did in Stockholm last February, it's exactly a year ago. This was called Pioneer of the Year. We were one of the hosts or arrangers for this event. And that was about social entrepreneurship. I mean, everybody's speaking about social entrepreneurship now. And we selected 10 very promising social entrepreneurs in Sweden. And then we said, okay, what do they need? They need developing of their ideas because they were in the beginning stages. So we matched these 10 entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, young ones, with 10 established entrepreneurs that had success in selling companies or other fields with expertise in management, financing, global expansion, marketing, everything. And for 48 hours in a castle outside Stockholm, we had sessions together. So every entrepreneur got half an hour to an hour with the established entrepreneurs. So they had like 10 sessions each. So we had obviously 100 sessions. And a lot of other social events around this. And then the third day, after this weekend, where they've polished their ideas with the help of these established ones, We had a session where they presented in front of a big audience and a jury consisting of venture capital persons, because we wanted to make this business oriented. And then the three best ones won prize money, office space in 30 countries around the world, because one of our partners was the Hub, which is a global office, and a trip to London to visit the British Council and things like that. What we've done in this particular contest was to promote social entrepreneurship in Sweden and to show that it's not about one particular issue. We even have a singer there as one of the contestants, and her focus was to, write lyrics and sing songs about environmental issues, social issues, and stuff. So it's very broad things. And so the general idea here was, of course, to promote entrepreneurship. We also wanted to test them and give them new skills. We had a subsection of the contest on Facebook, where 2 weeks before they came to the castle, we said to them, here's a Facebook page each. And we give them, the one of you that has as many likes as possible to your page, you will get an extra credit in the final selection. And this went completely crazy, because they generated so many likes that the entire competition was seen all over Sweden, and we had radio spots, we had national newspapers and 16 articles, 34 blogs, and think now this is Swedish numbers, so it's large. It went completely crazy. So everybody that understands and knows the word social entrepreneurship in Sweden knows this competition, Pioneer of the Year. This was a typical case. Then we've done climate campaigns where we convinced municipalities, companies, individuals to lower their emissions by 10% every year. This is something we got an award from the municipality in Lund, where we are headquartered. It was as part of a global campaign as well, so we were doing the Swedish part. We've done case competitions in schools where we promote interdisciplinary work. It can be quite a lot of varied. The main theme is always sustainable issues. That's what we're trying to promote, and that can be social entrepreneurship in some cases, and it can be sustainable city development, which we did a project now last September also. It depends, of course, on where we will work. In some countries, environment might not be the highest priority, it might be social issues, so we have to see what we do. But our model is, of course, we work with government agencies and academic sector, and then we bring in the corporate partners, and that's how we get paid. This is not charity for us, so we work a lot about, in these activities, creating business value for our corporate partners as well. So it might be that we have like sessions on creating solutions for a specific problem that this company is interested in. So they get value out of it. They get exposure, of course, to interesting markets and to students, meet interesting students and all that. So it's a model that worked quite well. And now we're trying to expand it.
So you're trying to do that here in Egypt?
Yes, we have some very exciting projects coming up. So my last slide, good you reminded me, was that thank you for listening, of course, and stay in touch. I'm myself I'm on Facebook, but most of all, you can just go in here on our sustainability company's Facebook page, press like, and you can, in your news feed, of course, then just get every news we have about upcoming projects in Egypt, which we'll reveal in time. I'm not going to go into specifics around everything right now. You will hear about one soon, but so remember this and go and press like, and you'll see everything we communicated is in English. So that is our corporate language, basically. We'll see when we get to the Arabic version.
Do you take any fees from the students for these sessions? From where do you take?
For this?
No. For your company?
No. I mean, there's the only fees we take is from the corporate sector. I mean, Yeah. No, nothing. For the students, we're here for you. I mean, to give you interesting opportunities. So hopefully we can connect you with big business if you want to go to work for them in the future, or to promote and give you the tools for entrepreneurship, these kind of things. We do not charge students now. Yes.
First, thank you for your interesting presentation. I'm Muhammad. I'm a PhD student at Cairo University and interested in federal e-government and interoperability issues. The startup from scratch, what inspired us? I think all of us has known many success stories of entrepreneurs, technology fields especially, like Steve Jobs, Macintosh project, also Google has begun as a research project, and you are a success story. But when I have heard about this talk, I took some notes and question you have mentioned many of it. But when I have an idea and I want to implement it, there are many questions and issues will be in mind. Having a clear business plan, you talk about it, but I need to focus on my contribution. Second, what about return on investment issues before start?
This is an interesting question. Okay, let me talk about this one with the business plan, and I take it you mean offering return on investment for the investors, right? Yes. Like I said, to be absolutely clear, when you're starting out the first time as an entrepreneur, I recommend you to do a business plan of some sort. It doesn't have to be 30 pages or whatever, you know. It can even be in a very good PowerPoint presentation, but you have to cover the basic headlines, you know, business idea, how do you protect it, who's the team, what's the market, what's the financials and stuff like that. As a first-time entrepreneur, I think it's extremely important to get yourself structured and to show people that you know how to play the game. You understand what it takes, okay? And in that sense, there is a section, of course, on the return on investment where you make these models I explained before with Excel sheets and all these things. I mean, you don't have to create it from scratch. I mean, there are models out there for you to use. You just put in your numbers and it will come out at a result on the other end. So in that sense, yes, I think that's important. But now I'm doing this for the second or third time or whatever, and we're out now talking for our IT company trying to raise money. If an investor asks me in the first meeting for the business plan, or what's your financial projections for the next 3 years, I'll say thank you, goodbye, or in a nicer way, of course. But I'm not interested in that because, and I think this is happening now as well. I've talked to a lot of investors, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs that are, I mean, serial entrepreneurs, and they say the business plan is dead, okay? What you need to show is an interesting idea and an interesting team. Because you've already proven the first time that you know how to create business plans and all these things. It's more of a test for them to see that, like I said, you know how to play it. But afterwards, the real value and what they will make, it's not by you guessing what will happen, how much money you're going to make for the next 3 years, because it's all guess. You don't know, they don't know, and everybody says that they know, they're lying. So instead of wasting time, you know, and doing these things that takes hours and hours, and then the next month, oh, something happened in the market and all this is wrong, okay? So don't waste your time on that. So this with the return on investment, you need to have a conversation so they understand what the business is, okay? What is the product? What's the potential of the product? And then you can have discussions on possible business models. But I mean, if you ask Google if nobody else. I mean, do they understand the first year when they created the algorithm for the search that they're going to make money on advertising? No, of course not. These things develop over time, and you realize that maybe we should do this instead with the technology instead of what we thought from the beginning. And what good then is if you've done a lot of these business calculations, financial calculations. So again, when you compete and do the work and show that you can do it, but when you're out in the real world and you've done it a couple of times already, don't put too much emphasis on that. Then your emphasis should be presenting yourself as a really good entrepreneur, that you've done things, you have a good network. They have to believe in you, basically. So it's a matter of phases in your career.
You have talked about financial facilities and marketing, but I think that the environment will differ from country to country, especially about legal issues and intellectual property or many other things. But what about the risk of failure? The risk of failure in Egypt and in the Arab world in general are very expensive. I remember the saying of Winston Churchill when he says that success is the ability to go from one failure to another without loss enthusiasm or interest.
It's a good one, yeah. I mean, yes, it is different in every country. As I said before, I don't know all the specifics of being an Egyptian entrepreneur, so it's hard for me to say how. I cannot value the risk of failure here. You're better than I am at that. All I can say is that when you're at this point in your life, when you're still studying, the risk of failure is much smaller. I mean, you don't, or I don't know, but perhaps you don't have already a family and a big house or whatever, or a small house. You don't have those things weighing you down, because if you're like 35 and you decide to quit your company, your job, and start a new business, that's not going to make money for the next couple of years. The risk of failure is, of course, much higher than if you're doing it when you're a student and you're testing different ideas, you know, with your friends or your colleagues or whatever. So it's also depending on time in your life. You mentioned something else about intellectual property. I realized I didn't mention that. About we had patents for our first company. We're seeking patents now for the second one. In Congress, we don't work with patents, obviously. But we had patents, which cost us a lot of money. I mean, I think we spent £500,000 Egyptian pounds on patents just for one patent, because it has to be in the US, Europe, Asia, whatever. And it's kind of like a parallel with the business plan, because the investors, they have this checklist of things they want to see when they're going to invest, okay? Good team, good idea, protect the technology or service is another one they want to check on their list. So if you can say that, oh yes, we have a patent on this, then they will investigate, of course, if it's good or not. It can be of assistance, especially if you're doing technical things. So it's a matter of, you know, getting the investors to like you a little bit more. But in terms of market relevance, I mean, we had a patent, okay, worldwide patent almost for our technology. But let's say one of the bigger ones, or at least it was copied in China, or Microsoft decided to do something, or Google. I mean, they will do exactly what our patent says, and they don't give a shit, because what can we do? I mean, let's go to court. They have money, we don't. It's easy. I mean, so the market relevance of having a patent, and when you're a small startup, is of course zero. It's mostly because you can attract more money from the investors for a higher valuation. Once you start growing, and you have the financial muscle to protect the patent, because one thing to have it, another thing to protect it, then it can get interesting, of course. But
okay, we have only time for only one more question, because we need to make an announcement 5 minutes before you leave. So anybody else have that question? So we will talk more after the go ahead.
Okay. You speak about the person should analyze himself if he's a leader or a follower. I want to ask if the person finds himself a good follower. Is not a good as to be a leader?
No, absolutely not. What I said is that you have to analyze yourself, and if you're not comfortable, you don't want to be a leader, you say, no, I'm better at following, that's fine, because what the company needs to employ people also. So no, absolutely not. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that because I'm an entrepreneur, I start companies. Obviously, I promote that issue. But I need to employ people also. I mean, you need managers at big companies that probably make much more money than I do, that are perhaps more followers, but they grow, you know, in their careers, and then they're becoming managers. But you don't stay in the same job forever. You always grow, whatever type of person you are. So if you think you are a leader, it might turn out in a few years that you're actually not very good at leadership. You're perhaps better behind the scenes person. It could be that you think you're a follower in the beginning, and then you realize after a few years that you are actually very good at leading. So things change. And everybody is, I mean, as long as you provide value in your job, either as an entrepreneur or as an employee, that's the most important thing. Create something valuable. And you can do that from any like I said, the entrepreneur that sells kafta or vegetables in this street, of course he has a value. He's providing a service. He's just chosen something completely different from what I would choose, obviously. But everybody needs to fill their particular role in society. But I think my personal belief is that as the world works today, you're never going to be, like for example, my parents, they always had the same job. This is not going to happen now, so things change. That's why I'm doing this now instead of IT only. And maybe if you ask me in 10 years, might be negotiating peace agreements or whatever. I mean, I have these crazy ideas that I want to do. So this is what I'm doing right now. Yes, okay.